Last episode, England was finally united. King Alfred fought from the muddy swamps. He built heavily fortified wooden towns. His grandson Athelstan finished the fight. The fractured heptarchy became one nation. The terrible Viking threat was pushed back. A golden age of peace began. Monasteries were rebuilt in grand stone. The Anglo-Saxons felt completely secure. But a king died without an heir. 3 powerful men claimed the empty throne. Armies gathered across the dark seas. A massive comet blazed across the sky. People believed it signaled absolute doom. The bloodiest year in history had arrived. We are doing a comprehensive series on the grand history of Britain, covering everything from mud villages to fractured kingdoms. New episodes will drop every single week, so make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel so you never miss an update. In January of 1066, the deeply religious King Edward the Confessor died without leaving a direct heir. His death created a massive, dangerous power vacuum that threatened to tear the peaceful nation completely apart. On his deathbed, he supposedly promised the English throne to his powerful brother-in-law, Harald Godwinson. Harald was the wealthiest and most influential noble in all of England, commanding immense respect from the people. He was immediately crowned by the English nobles, but his bold claim was fiercely challenged from across the sea. In the northern lands of Normandy, the ruthless Duke William was completely enraged by the news of Harold's coronation. William claimed that Edward had previously promised the English crown to him many years ago during a royal visit. He also claimed that Harold had sworn a sacred oath on holy relics to support his rightful succession. The Pope himself publicly supported William's claim, sending a sacred papal banner to bless the upcoming invasion. He declared the invasion a holy crusade, promising absolute absolution of sins for any man who fought for Normandy. William immediately began cutting down vast forests to build a massive invasion fleet of wooden longships. He recruited thousands of heavily armored knights and brutal mercenaries from all across continental Europe. Landless younger sons flocked to his banner, eagerly hoping to win wealthy English estates through brutal violence. Blacksmiths worked day and night forging thousands of iron swords, heavy chainmail shirts, and deadly lance tips. Meanwhile, a third dangerous rival emerged from the icy fjords of Norway to claim the exact same prize. The legendary Viking warrior Harald Hardrada believed he was the true and rightful ruler of the English people. He commanded a massive fleet of 300 dragon ships filled with battle-hardened Norse veterans. In September, the fearsome Norwegian king launched a massive surprise invasion into the north of England. He easily crushed the local northern militias and confidently awaited the formal surrender of the regional lords. King Harald Godwinson was waiting in the south for William, but he was forced to march his army rapidly north. The English forces marched day and night, covering an astonishing 200 miles in just under a week. They caught the invading Vikings completely by surprise at the incredibly bloody Battle of Stamford Bridge. Many of the Norsemen had left their heavy armor on their ships because it was a remarkably hot autumn day. The fierce Anglo-Saxon warriors completely decimated the Norwegian invaders and killed the legendary Harald Hardrada. It was a stunning, decisive military victory that proved Harald Godwinson was a brilliant and capable battlefield commander. They captured so many Viking ships that the survivors only needed 24 vessels to sail back to Norway. This spectacular victory definitively ended the long era of Viking invasions in the British Isles once and for all. However, the exhausted English soldiers did not have even a single moment to celebrate their grand triumph. Just 3 days later, the wind shifted in the English Channel, allowing the Norman fleet to finally set sail. Duke William landed on the southern beaches of Pevensey with an army of 7,000 professional killers. They faced absolutely no resistance on the beaches because the English Navy had been forced to return to port for supplies. They immediately built a temporary wooden castle on the beach and began viciously plundering the surrounding countryside. King Harald was forced to march his battered, exhausted troops all the way back down the length of the country. He desperately gathered whatever local militias he could find along the long, grueling journey south. Many of his finest, most experienced soldiers had just been killed fighting the Vikings in the distant north. On the morning of October 14th, the two massive armies finally met near the small town of Hastings. The air was incredibly tense as the two radically different military cultures prepared for absolute slaughter. If you're enjoying this historical journey so far, please take a quick moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. King Harald cleverly positioned his exhausted troops at the very top of a steep ridge known as Senlac Hill. The Anglo-Saxons locked their large wooden shields together to form an impenetrable, solid defensive wall. They stood shoulder to shoulder, gripping their heavy iron spears and massive two-handed battle axes. The English army fought entirely on foot, relying purely on the immovable strength of their dense infantry lines. Duke William arranged his Norman forces at the bottom of the hill in three highly organized, disciplined lines. He placed his deadly archers in the front, followed by heavy infantry and terrifying armored cavalry in the rear. The battle began with a massive volley of Norman arrows raining down upon the English defensive positions. But the deadly arrows simply bounced harmlessly off the tightly locked wooden shields of the Anglo-Saxon wall. William then ordered his heavily armored infantry to charge directly up the steep, muddy hillside. They struggled to climb the uneven terrain while wearing incredibly heavy suits of interlocking iron chainmail. The English defenders viciously hacked the Norman attackers to pieces with their terrifyingly heavy axes. A single swing of a Saxon battle axe could easily cleave a man and his horse completely in half. The Norman infantry broke in absolute panic and began retreating rapidly down the bloody slope. A wild rumor suddenly spread through the retreating ranks that Duke William had been killed in the chaotic fighting. To stop the panic, William threw back his iron helmet to show his face, screaming that he was still alive. He bravely rallied his terrified troops and ordered his heavy cavalry to charge the unbroken English lines. The ground shook violently as hundreds of massive war horses galloped directly toward the wooden shields. Despite repeated, thunderous cavalry charges, the incredible Anglo-Saxon shield wall simply refused to break. The battle raged on for grueling hours, leaving the muddy hillside completely covered in thousands of dead bodies. Water sources near the battlefield turned entirely red with the thick blood of fallen men and dying horses. Neither side asked for any mercy, and the brutal hand-to-hand combat continued relentlessly under the hot sun. William quickly realized that direct, forceful assaults would never break the disciplined English defensive formation. He ordered his cavalry to charge the hill again, but this time he commanded them to fake a panicked retreat. The exhausted, blood-hungry English militiamen made a fatal mistake and broke their disciplined ranks to chase the cavalry. They ran down the hill, screaming in triumph, fully believing they had finally won the desperate battle. As soon as the English abandoned their high ground, the Norman horsemen rapidly spun around and surrounded them. The isolated English soldiers were ruthlessly slaughtered on the open field by the highly mobile Norman knights. William repeated this clever, deadly tactic several times, slowly thinning the dense ranks of the Anglo-Saxon wall. Discipline completely vanished as more and more English fighters foolishly rushed down the hill to their absolute deaths. As the sun began to set, the English defensive line was exhausted, severely depleted, and on the verge of total collapse. The royal bodyguards closed their ranks tightly around King Harald to protect him from the relentless Norman assaults. William ordered his remaining archers to fire their arrows high into the air, so they would fall vertically on the defenders. This deadly rain of arrows forced the English to lift their shields, exposing their bodies to the advancing cavalry. According to historical legend, a single, fatal arrow struck King Harald directly in his right eye. He screamed in absolute agony as the horrific wound instantly blinded and completely incapacitated him. The wounded king was then brutally hacked to the ground by a squad of advancing Norman knights. They mercilessly mutilated his fallen body to ensure that the English king was truly and undeniably dead. With their brave king dead, the remaining English soldiers lost all hope and finally fled into the dark forest. The bloody Battle of Hastings was over, and the independent Anglo-Saxon era was permanently extinguished. The hillside was completely silent, heavily carpeted with the broken bodies of England's greatest warriors. Duke William marched his victorious army directly toward London, burning every single defiant village along the way. The surviving English nobles were completely terrified and quickly surrendered the mighty capital city without a fight. On Christmas Day, the foreign conqueror was officially crowned as the new King of England in Westminster Abbey. He replaced the entire native English nobility with his own loyal, French-speaking Norman barons. LD English was completely banned from the royal courts and replaced by the harsh tones of Norman French. Massive land estates were violently stripped from native families and handed directly to foreign mercenaries as payment. The language, culture, and absolute destiny of the island were violently altered in a single afternoon of slaughter. The newly conquered people were about to learn what it truly meant to live under the crushing weight of foreign masters. Next week on our channel, we will feel the crushing grip of the iron feudal fist. We will witness the construction of massive stone castles designed to heavily subdue the angry, rebellious villages. Get ready to see the creation of the famous Doomsday Book as William catalogs everything his new kingdom owns. You will discover how the Norman conquerors forced an entire nation into strict, unforgiving feudal servitude. If you enjoyed this animated journey through the bloodiest battle in history, hit that like button right now to show your support. Make sure to subscribe to our channel, Stickman Chronicles, so you are first in line when the next episode drops. Thank you for watching, keep exploring the past, and we will see you right here next week for the ultimate showdown.